Okay, welcome back everyone. This is Module 4, and we are in the book trailer introduction series here. So we've talked a lot about what kind of books make a good trailer. We've gone over hook and mood and story, those sort of things in the previous modules. This one is going to be exclusively about voiceovers and scripting. So just kind of an introduction as to what they are, how to go about thinking about them, and then we'll have a couple of activities in here. So this will be a really useful one. So stay tuned for more. So this is called Say It Like You Mean It, Scriptwriting and Voiceovers 101. So I pose this question to you, and that is, what if your book had a voice? And what makes a script catchy, and what gives a trailer emotion? So we will show a couple of trailers right here. So they're ones that we've seen in previous modules. So one of them is The Red Queen that has voiceover, and the other one is called One of Us is Lying that uses text and music instead of voiceovers. So just to kind of talk about the differences between the two and how they make you feel and whatnot. So let's go ahead and watch those, and we'll talk about those in a second.
In school, we learned about the world before ours, about the angels and gods that lived in the sky, ruling the earth with kind and loving hands. Some say those are just stories, but I don't believe that. The gods rule us still. They have come down from the stars, and they are no longer kind.
Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and watched those, so my question to you would be, which one of those feels like a stronger trailer? So I would say that you could probably have a little bit of points for each of them. So I would say One of Us is Lying by using text. It makes it seem a lot more mysterious. But by using the ominous music and sort of just showing flashes of scenes, it really creates a lot of mystery, which I think is a really interesting technique. Whereas I feel like The Red Queen, the voiceover is interesting because you kind of get a sense of maybe who the character is. It's very dramatically pronounced and everything, so that kind of sets a little bit more of a tone in the book. And of course, when you're doing a voiceover in such a short time, you can say a lot more than you can with just text and whatnot. So depending on what kind of tone you're trying to set, how much you want to fit into your approximately 1-minute trailer, you could choose either technique. Both work fine. They just set different kinds of tones. So in terms of writing an engaging script, so here's a few points to that matter. So we're not just telling the story, we're going to tease it. So we've talked about this one before, but line 1 should be the hook, so grabbing attention. And we're going to use the Hunger Games to talk about this one. So 1 girl, 12 districts, 1 fight for survival. That's sort of your hook to get viewers interested in what you're doing. And then you're teasing a little bit, but you're not saying too much. Line 2 is where you build the conflict. So we're talking again about that beginning, middle, and end kind of thing, and we're just kind of filling in what needs to be in those things. So line 2, building the conflict, introducing suspense. When the Capitol calls your name, you don't run. So that would be like your next scene. So you're talking about the Capitol, which is like the place that's in the movie. You're talking a little bit about the contest that they're doing, so them calling your name. And then you don't run kind of implies that it's something that you have to do, you can't take off, sort of setting the stage for what's to come for the characters in the story. And line 3, tease the ending, leave them wanting more, let the games begin. So in this trailer, you might show flashes of maybe parts of the games and stuff, people shooting arrows, which happens a lot in the book and the movie. And to me, that's a really exciting trailer to sort of introduce the contest, talk about the setting, and then have some action shots to end it off and talk about the game. So those are really strong lines, but this is just to sort of explain how you go about scripting and how you might think about doing your voiceovers. And now for our quick activity, we're just going to go ahead and do that very thing. So you're going to do some mini script writing. So really all that means is you're just going to write a 3-line script for your favorite book. So this could be one that you've used before for previous activities, but just think about it the exact way that we did with the Hunger Games there, where it was like introducing the idea and then creating the suspense in the middle and sort of ending it off. So exactly the way that we crafted it and talked about it in the previous slide is how you would go about doing that. So just make sure that it's very dramatic and very mysterious. So go ahead and write your 3 lines, and we'll give you some time to do that, and we'll come right back. So now we're just going to talk a little bit about text versus voice versus a combo of 2. So should you speak it or should you show it? So when we watched those first 2 trailers in the beginning, obviously One of Us Is Lying was more of a text with music and images and not really any voiceover, and the Red Queen was very much a voiceover type trailer, but it also had images, it also had text in it. So here's the 3 styles. So narration means a voiceover, and you're telling the story aloud, so that would mean you're recording a voice file or a video file and then maybe putting some clips over top of it. Or you could even appear in the trailer if you think that would add to it as well. On-screen text, so that visually delivers the message, and also depending on what kind of color that you pick or what kind of font you pick, that also sort of sets the tone of what is the trailer about, what kind of emotion do you want to set for it. Or you could also do a combo, so blending the voice and the text. So most trailers tend to do a lot of that. So I'd say that the Red Queen was probably the best example of that one, because it did have voice, it did have images, it also had some text, it had music, it kind of had a little bit of everything. So it does really make a strong trailer when you have all of those elements and you pack so much into that minute-long teaser. But, you know, something like One of Us Is Lying, it's a little more mysterious, less is more, right? So it really just depends on how you want to go about it, what kind of skills you want to practice to make your own trailer here. So the power of voiceovers and sound. So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So you have to consider your tone, your pacing, your volume, and the emotion and narration. So, you know, let's talk about let the games begin. We'll just use a really simple line here. So show the same script read 3 ways. So you can read it flat, you can read it over the top, and you can read it dramatic but controlled. So I'll kind of model those examples, and it just goes to show that your delivery really does matter. So if I'm saying it flat, that means I'm not putting a lot of emotion into it. So I'm just saying, let the games begin, right? It's not very exciting, right? Over the top is, let the games begin. So, you know, you're really kind of putting it all out there and making it seem very exciting and whatnot. And dramatic but controlled would be something like, let the games begin, right? So you're using like a little bit of interesting tones for it and a bit of a different delivery than simply just delivering the line. So think about those examples when you decide how you would want to do your voiceovers, and it really does make a difference. And it's always good to use clear recording technologies like a microphone, like a phone. Just make sure that there's no background noise and whatnot. It's really hard to clean up stuff like that after you've recorded, so always make sure that you have a quiet space to do that. So here's a second quick activity we're going to do. So wrap up activity, build a scene. So putting it all together. So you're using your 3-line script. You're going to make some of these decisions. Just think about that. You can write it down on a scrap piece of paper. Like I said, we will have those longer activities to do, of course, after these modules are done. So make these decisions about your 3-line script that you wrote. So would you do text only? Would you do voiceover, or both? And then maybe think about adding one sound effect idea. So something like footsteps, wind, whispering, something like that. So go ahead and take a little time to take your script and make those decisions, write them down, and we'll go about the rest of the lesson in a minute. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and done that, so now we should have a 3-line script. We should have a little bit of a plan of text, voiceovers, both. Maybe some sound effects written down, so those will feed really nicely into the activities that we have planned. It's just worksheets about the bigger process, about more thinking about these things, and towards building your actual trailer. So at this point, we don't have to actually commit to these ideas per se. This is more just practice, but as we go through the modules and we're going to eventually produce our trailer, do start to get more serious about these ideas. Maybe if you have several of them, you could just pick the one that you like the best and whatnot. But good that we're planning it out, and it really helps to sort of iron out the process to do these things in advance. All right, so our key takeaways for today. We talked a little bit about voiceovers, so we did that. Went over the pronunciations, emotions, tones, those sort of things. Talked about great script writing, so hook, suspense, mystery, and conclusion. So, starting with a hook, building a little suspense, and then ending on a mysterious line. We talked about the Hunger Games example, and we watched One of Us is Lying and The Red Queen as our voiceover versus non-voiceover examples. We did our 3-line script activity, which will be really helpful to you for script writing in the future and how to put together your own trailer. We talked about the consequences of using text, voice, or a combination. A little bit of comparison work there. Not saying that any of them is better than another, but having the combination of text and voiceover obviously makes a really strong trailer because you can pack so much information into it. And then we did the types of voiceovers. So, flat, over the top, and dramatic but controlled delivery. And I kind of demonstrated that with the let the games begin line. So you can kind of see how those things make a difference in how your trailer comes out. And then, of course, we did our quick activity, build a scene. And now you'll have a couple of script lines and you have a couple of ideas about how you would go about taking those script lines and then starting to form it into your trailer idea of 1 minute or less. So that's going to do it for Module 4. A really important one with script and voiceover discussions. Some great examples in here. So go ahead and complete those activities next. And we also have a little quiz for you at the end. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.